Welcome to the show. If you have or if you know anyone with severe allergies, you're probably familiar with the little device known as the EpiPen. And if you aren't, surely you've heard some of the public outrage recently over the new price, which is nearly 6 times what it was in 2007. Colin, is the government to blame?
No, the government is not to blame. So I think that there are, as usual, a couple of different nuances here that we need to talk about. So certainly when it comes to a life-saving device, so forgetting everything else that I'm going to say, when you're dealing with a life-saving device, there has to be some sort of equity, and it should be available for anybody, because obviously we don't want anybody to suffer a life-threatening issue because it's not affordable for them, right? We do have, however, and I think there's a bigger issue that we have as a society from a health standpoint, which is the ever-increasing amount of allergies that we have as a population to things that normally should be within our breadth and scope of things that we as humans can consume. So the best example I can offer to you on that is nut allergies. So as a hunter-gatherer species for 2.5 million years, we ate nuts and berries. That was our food staple. Having humans that are allergic to nuts is an aberration from a genetic standpoint. However, the one discovery that we've made recently when it comes to allergies is a lot of these allergies are not genetic, they're not endemic, and are due to behaviors that are instituted into children at a very early age. And there is a way to deal with allergies where you're exposing people who are allergic to certain things to small doses and increasing doses and eventually overcome the allergies. So I think that we need to deal with a health crisis when it comes to the allergies that we have. On a grander scale, however, we need to re-examine the things that we're allergic to and whether there are better strategies for dealing with those.
Ron, it didn't take long for the Republicans to come out and say this is an unintended consequence of Obamacare. Right or wrong?
Well, everything is. I've never heard them come out and say anything about the price of oil going down by 60–70%, and your home heating fuel being way cheaper, your natural gas being cheaper, and the gasoline to drive your car. See, I've never seen them say anything about that being cheaper. You brought up some very good points. The real matter of the fact, Mylan bought the drug rights from Merck. Mm-hmm. Billions of dollars that goes into research and development for drugs with no substantial payback has to be paid for. The day will come where there'll be a generic drug that is brought out, and watch how much the $600 pen, EpiPen, goes down closer to where it was at the $48. So it's a matter of perception. It's a matter of what they've done. It's a matter of Mylan. I was shocked to find out that the head of Mylan is the daughter of Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia.
Well, I think that there's, however, another piece that we need to talk about. So worldwide, there is a disparity when it comes to research that goes into drug development. However, in the U.S., the FDA and the NIH actually invest a lot of funds in drug development. So sometimes the argument that drug companies make that they're trying to recollect on funding that they spent in drug research is a little bit, should be taken with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of federal funding that goes into it. And, yes, everything that happens.
But Merck didn't put the money into it.
Well, was it Merck or Mylan?
No,
it was Mylan.
Mylan bought it from Merck.
Okay.
Merck didn't put the research and development in, Mylan did. So Mylan's now trying to recover their money. Who was the guy that raised prices of something not too awful long ago, and they forced him to bring him back down?
And it didn't go too well for him, did it?
No, it did not go too well. And when Sarah Jessica Parker says, hey, my 13-year-old son takes this medicine, I'm going to stop talking to you, and a couple congressmen and senators say, we're going to pull in the head of Mylan, which is Manchin's daughter, suddenly you're going to find the price there going down.
So let's explore that tangent for just a minute. We have famous people. We have sports figures that are standing up, or in some cases sitting down, in protest on some of these things. In the case of Sarah Jessica Parker, she ended her relationship with Mylan as a result of this.
Yeah.
Is that what they should do?
No, and that's complete baloney. Look, we had famous people, quote unquote, that were against vaccines a few years ago because they thought that they caused autism, which was proven scientifically to be complete baloney. So we shouldn't really be paying any attention to what sports figures or other cultural or media icons are believing on this. We should be paying attention to what science tells us.
Ron?
I think he's got a good point, but Kaepernick sit down because he's not happy with the way a certain segment of the population is being treated by the federal government. So what's he done? He's decided to sit down through the national anthem.
Which, to be personally, I don't care what your philosophy is. That is purely disrespectful on a patriotic level.
And we talked about not too long ago about being disrespectful to fly the American flag upside down under a Chinese flag because somebody's got a pipeline going past their house.
Right.
Is that a First Amendment right? I don't think so.
No. I think freedom of expression, although it should never be curtailed, has certain limitations when it comes to common sense things. And disrespect of the national symbols is one of those.
I totally agree, but you have some sports figures that think that they're going to be heard. Why, of all people, to sit down during the national anthem?
And the sad part about that is, yes, they have great ratings because they've achieved something, or maybe they're getting ratings on a sports field. But what have they done from a social standpoint, from a patriotic standpoint? Are they veterans? No. They're nobodies.
But they have a voice and they have a following, and I think that's the key there. Back to the Mylan thing for just a minute. The Mylan CEO was touted as having received significant pay increases over the last couple of years. Is that an issue?
You know it's going to be an issue. It's an issue with the American people.
Is it
or
an
to
issue for
people
you,
that-
Ron?
Absolutely, it's an issue.
Okay.
It's
Tell me why.
Major issue. It's a major issue because I think CEOs, the upper 1% of CEOs in this country that bring in the big bucks, regardless if they pass or whether they do a good job or a bad job, they get far too much money. And you can say, well, they have a lot of responsibility. Well, that's where a major portion of our money is going.
Well, they don't
The
have
CEOs.
more responsibility than middle and upper level management do, who are the actual people who are doing stuff. And I think Ron, you're bringing up a very good point, which is there is, and this doesn't just apply to this particular topic. It's generally speaking in the corporate world that we have here in the U.S., we are overcompensating people at that level. There's no reason somebody at a C level should be making hundreds of times more than somebody who's actually producing some sort of wealth for that company or some sort of benefit for that company.
So finding in real problems in our political process today, are people making too much money? Top 1%? Are they taking, who controls 95% of the world's wealth?
But how do you, in a capitalist society, how do you change that? You can't regulate that.
We're
can you?
not a capitalist society.
Okay. Well,
And we were never set up to be that way because pure capitalism leads to just as much chaos without any sort of regulation as complete regulation leads to.
But we
So
are more
in a
towards the
balanced-
capitalistic side, or theoretically, more than the socialistic
Depends
side.
on who you ask.
Well, I know if Bernie Sanders were here, he'd have his opinion.
And is his opinion really that far out of whack with a lot of other Western economic systems that don't necessarily abide by the same notion of free capitalism, which again we don't have in this country? So it is to a large degree a shell game.
Yeah. I'll go to a business meeting, local business meeting. You bring up the minimum wage, and you talk about $12 to $15 minimum wage, they go berserk.
They should.
Right, they should.
Except-
but then the same people complain about welfare.
Well,
they
we need
complain
to
about
stop.
food stamps.
We need to stop and think about something. In any society, I don't care what your political belief is, when you have somebody who's working full time and they're below poverty level, there is something fundamentally wrong with that. What more do you expect from that person?
But at the same time, we want our dollar hamburgers at McDonald's,
No,
and
we
want
don't.
our
Well,
cheap
who,
stuff.
may-
wait a minute. Who's we?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some.
Some.
There are those that
They got
And
rich
are they
stockholders.
producing wealth or are they producing a benefit to our economic system?
Well, that's a question for another time because we just ran out of time, and we're going to give you the last word on that, Colin. Next up on the flip side, our panel weighs in on what your pension might look like lately. We're back in 3 minutes. Stay tuned.